saw a lovely picture that Tam was working on from Lifebook, and I thought, oh, I haven't done a double girl page before, so I thought I'll give it a go. So I've just drawn in a couple of girls on the side here, and I'm just putting out all my flesh tones at the moment. Most of them are Americana, and I've got Santa's Flesh, Buttercream, June's Beige, Peaches and Cream, Medium Flesh, and I'm using a Tim Holtz, what's it called, Antique Linen, and a Victorian Velvet Stain, just to add a little bit of extra. And of course I mixed it up with this big brush, and then of course I needed the smaller brush to go in. I thought, oh, this original thing was a little bit dark, but that's okay. We're just putting that first coat in, and of course they're whimsy girls, so you know, it'll be interesting to see how they turn out from this point. I was sitting here going, oh gosh, that's coming out really quite dark. But then one of the things I love about acrylics is that you can really layer upon layer upon layer. Unlike watercolors and crayons and things like that, you can't layer upon layer upon layer. So that's what I really like about acrylics. So even though I might be thinking at this point, oh, that's a bit dark, I can do something about it. So now I'm just going in, and I mean, this whole process of doing the face takes a long time, and you'll see that I just layer upon layer upon layer. I use some neo colors and my flesh tones, and I add a few other bits and pieces in, and I just keep drawing noses in and doing all sorts of things, and I gradually get there. That's the point. You gradually get there. And I just really thought that at this point I needed to let that dry, so I've just left that whole face there to dry. So now I'm coming in with my lighter tones and the buttercream. So I'm not using a white, not until a little bit later when I'm looking at using white, but now I'm using a neo color crayon, and that neo color crayon is actually called Rose. It's called what? Ultramarine Rose Outreamer. But it's really a lilac. So I'm doing that just to add some different shadows around the eyes. And you can see I've painted right over their noses at this point, and I'm going in with the crayon quite heavily, then using just the tiniest bit of water to activate it. And just different types. So now I've got that buttercream. You can just see I'm going in and putting some highlights in, and it'll be layer after layer after layer. And I often use a scrubby circular motion in my brushes when I'm doing these kind of blending techniques, not a strokey motion. And I find that I'm, putting some cheek colour in here, and that's premature because, I'm going to do something different with it again. And you often see my head, I guess, looking over at this point, because I'm really at this point just using my graphite pencil to redefine different parts of the face, just so I don't, with the layering, completely go over it all the time. And often with a palette like this, I'll just mix the colours as I go on the face, on the palette, so that you get even more tones than what you've put out. So it's all about now just making these faces look more and more ethereal and cute and pretty. And like every face, I just want to let you know now, every single face has its ugly side, its ugly stage, and you have to persist through it. So now the neo color that I'm using And I've still got them all out because I like to try and get these things embedded down before I go much further, otherwise they sit there and I forget about them. So I'm actually using a raw sienna. Raw sienna is one of my favorite colors for shading faces. I think it gives a real warmth and vibrancy to a face, and I'm also now going out with the flesh tone in the Neo color as well, just to liven them up and add a different kind of flesh tone rather than just the beige. So now I've got a very damp brush, and it is damp rather than really wet, and I'm going and blending all that crayon over the top. So it's like paint and then crayon and then paint and then crayon. And the thing that I like about the Americana paints is that they have tooths, so those crayons actually do mix in really quite well. So I'm just again layering. You go back, you add in some white, you do it when it's wet, you blend away. And look, this whole process I've sped up about 5.5 times, so this might be a 21-22 minute video, but if you times that by 5, that gives you an idea of how long this actually took. So it took about 2 hours, almost 2 hours all up to do this page, and most of that time was actually spent on the faces. They are the standout things on the page, and I'm very much one of those people that when I do my faces, I don't tend to do really strong backgrounds that will compete with the face. I tend to do a background afterwards as well, and you'll see some of the challenges that I've had with some of my backgrounds. But yes, I want to make those faces really stand out, and I really want to make them the feature of the page, not the background itself. So I really hate it when I've got a really busy background and then I've got a face in there and they compete with each other, and you really have trouble trying to see what is the focal point of the page. So you know in this one that the focal point of the page are the girls and their hair, and now I'm using my Prisma colors, and these are some of the colors that I just absolutely love to draw in, and I'm putting them in this color first because it's like that shadow kind of thing, and although I will go over it with paint and stuff again, that the hint of those will be under there. So you see that I'm now going over with a black Prisma, and you find that these still what can I say, Prismas, they still move a lot. So I'm going in and just putting the pupils in with the highlights, and I tend to like to leave my highlights of the white of the page, and then I will add some white. So I start to, that's another one of my Letracets that has just dried out, so I'm just using another marker. This is a beautiful mahogany colour, and these eyes are actually the very similar tonings to my eyes, and what I tend to do with the eyes is I will go with the outer, because you often find that eyes have dark and light parts and that they're ringed. So with the, I've gone in with much lighter, warmer brown in the Prisma there, and you start to see that you get a real depth in the eye. Now I'm going over and putting some dark marks in with a rollerball pen. Just to really make those look darker, because they looked more shadowy with the pencil. So now I'm just doing the lips, and I wanted to do softer lips for the little sister. Although you'd have to think, I think one definitely looks older, so I'm going in with the raw sienna again. Just accentuating those shadows again. And you can see at this point that, you know, your nose can become a blur if you're not careful. Now I'm shadowing the top of the eye because of course there are shadows in the eyes. And your eyeball never looks perfectly white. If you leave your eyeball perfectly white, it doesn't look dimensional. And I'm just using a water brush here, just gently with some watered down acrylic to just blend in those crayons a little bit more. And again, I'll layer it again, layer after layer. It doesn't take long to dry, but then you layer it and layer it and layer it and layer it again. So now I'm doing the broken line technique. So that sketchy kind of look. So it's not a perfect look. It's there really to just define rather than outline. So I started with some pencil in that same sort of pinky purpley shade. I really like it, and I really wanted it to be a shadowy point, and I probably will paint over it at this point, but I'm now just adding those shadows in with the pencil, shaping the cheeks, and coming in with the darker, like an eggplant kind of a colour. And often you're and see how I'm holding the pencil, I'm holding it at the end. It's not such harsh strokes then. I have to put a lot of effort into it if I'm going to do that, but if I want to be in a blending mood, then I don't do that. And you've got to be careful when you're using your inks on top of other things. They actually take longer to dry on top of paint, I've found. They don't have anything to soak into, because acrylic paints form a barrier, a non-porous surface. So now I'm just whitening up the eye because they become quite messy, and I have got some neo colour there in the violet. Just putting some highlights in. And I'm still not even finished, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but you know, I like it. I want to get ahead of myself here, and I get excited when I'm on the home stretch for faces. So I'm drawing in. One of the things with hair in this thing is to not make your hair, to make it look really random, because hair is not perfectly coiffed and the lines are not perfectly spaced, so you want to make it random so that the hair looks kind of more like normal hair, because if you have a look at that now, you don't get the sense that you don't get the sense that it's not flowing. There's movement in that hair, which is really cool. And at this point I'm going to take a photo of that and put it on Facebook to entice my Facebook viewers to watch this video. So there you go, you can see me doing that now. And there we go. And I don't cut this out because, you know, you get to see some of my process with what I do with that. And I often do that as I'm in. So now I'm going into the background. I'm using Schmink inks, and I tell you what, Schmink inks are the most heavily pigmented inks around. And here I have a massive problem. That sprayer was blocked, and it sprayed, instead of having a round a round spray, it just sprayed literally all over the girl's face, the eyes, the whites of the eyes. Now I'm having to go over that whole thing with a flesh tone again, and I tell you what, I didn't appreciate that at all, because I was going to do some finishing touches, but I wasn't happy about it. That whole face, that whole larger face was completely covered in white, and I have to go in with an actual white paint at this point. And I was just really disappointed in that nozzle, I can tell you now. So I'm going in and doing those white bits there. So now I'm just using a brush to smear some of those blotches around. And even though they've soaked into the Delusions page really, really well, it was awesome. I ended up having to do a little bit more, but I really like that kind of blurry background. And now I'm just using some, what's that called? That's some Jo Sonja's Brilliant Magenta, which is just a very vibrant pink. And I can mix it up myself, but I really like that colour. I remember seeing it on the on the stand and going, oh, I've got to have me that. So I'm going in and putting some lighter tones in the hair. And I'm following some of the segments that I've got there, but not some of the others. And I'll go back in and do some more as well. But now I'm going in with a Liquitex magenta, which tones in particularly well. And I love just having those different layers so you can see they're so pretty. And you have your light and your dark tones. Now I'm using a round brush that goes flat into a point, so that's pretty cool. It's very good for this sort of scenario. You have to keep reloading your brush a lot, but it works very well. And so now I'm starting to add some white in, and I just apply a stroke of white and then blend it in with the pinks again, and then I get not one, not two, not three, but heaps more light and shade in the hair, and then it blends with the wet paint as we go. And I don't know, I hope you learn something as I'm doing this, because it's lots of fun to give your hair light and shade and movement. And her hair's pretty, the other pink's pretty dry, so I've got to go in and use some more magenta to blend that in. And those layers just work really well. We're coming down to the downwards, the finishing stretch. You can see that smear on that left eye. I do fix that up. That's where the black ink has smeared when I had to fix up the spray mess that I'd made. Now I'm just filling in this edge here and just watering it out a little bit. Now I'm just redefining some of the black lines I put in before, which I just love. I think it really gives the hair more definition for this particular thing. And I fixed up that smear. Yeah, my husband rang while I was doing this. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm still filming, leave me be. He told me he's going to be home soon. So now what I'm going to be doing is actually doing some writing. The homeward stretch, and I found this awesome quote about sisters. Now I don't actually have a sister, but I found this great quote about sisters, and I thought I've had so many great girlfriends over the years that are just like sisters to me. This one I actually had to cut out the little bit where, you know, we're like sisters, but it actually says at the end, the saying is, we hang out, we help one another, we tell one another our worst fears and biggest secrets, we listen and we don't judge, just like real sisters. And I cut that out because I just love that, and I just thought it went really well with how I was feeling as I was doing that page. Now the light's really bright, so my top girl, she kind of looks a little bit washed out here, but she's not. She's looking a bit gorgeous. And I will try and get a photo into the end of this. Now I get to do the eyelashes because, you know, I love eyelashes, and redefined go in with my white Sharpie to put some highlights in. and redefine them, and I love that. And I lean over my work a lot when I'm doing this. And now I'm just going in and putting white shadows everywhere. So essentially that's it. It took me a long time. It took me 2 hours after I drew the girls. It didn't take me long to draw the girls, but yeah, it took me a little while. I love the fact that they're both different girls and they have different expressions on their faces. Their hair even looks different colours. There's slight different tones in the faces and the hair. I really like that about it, and the background just seems to be around them rather than encompassing and overshadowing them. And this is just a technique with the white Sharpie that makes your writing really stand out on the page, and it works really quite well. I use it quite a lot, and the Sharpies are really quite good for it, or you could use a white Signo. Just some highlights, and I'm just going in with a grey pencil now, and just to redefine those shadows on the eyes and for their chins. And that's it. Ciao for now.